Venezuela's president, Nicolás Maduro, has just been captured in a U.S.-led operation and flown to New York in handcuffs. North Korea has fired fresh ballistic missiles into the Sea of Japan. Trump world is again talking about Greenland and America's right to secure the Arctic. Most people see random headlines. This video connects them, because the next 6 months could quietly decide who controls oil, rare earths, and sea routes for decades. January 3, 2026. After years of sanctions, indictments, and threats, U.S. forces carry out a rapid operation in Caracas and extract President Nicolás Maduro and his wife to New York. He is now in a Brooklyn detention center facing U.S. federal charges for narco-terrorism, drug trafficking, and weapons-related conspiracies. Inside Venezuela, opponents celebrate while loyalists call it kidnapping. But one question matters more than the protest footage. What happens to the world's largest proven oil reserves? Venezuela holds around 303 billion barrels of proven oil, more than Saudi Arabia, about 18 to 20% of global reserves. For years, China and Russia poured in loans, bought crude at a discount, and used that oil to anchor their influence in Latin America. If Washington now runs Venezuela, as Trump himself suggested, this is not just regime change. It is an attempt to pull a massive energy prize out of the China-Russia orbit. Now jump thousands of kilometers north. As news of Maduro's capture dominates, Trump-aligned circles online start talking again about Greenland. Katie Miller, a senior Trump aide and wife of Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, posts an image on X, Greenland's outline completely covered in the American flag, with just one word in the caption, "Soon." The post explodes. Danish and Greenlandic politicians call it provocative and insulting. Denmark's ambassador to the U.S. reminds Washington that Denmark expects full respect for the territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark. Then, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen goes further, saying the U.S. has no right to annex Greenland or any other part of the Danish realm, and publicly urges Trump to stop the threats against a historically close ally. This is not random Twitter drama. Greenland is about 3 strategic levers. Critical minerals. Greenland is believed to hold significant deposits of rare earths and other critical minerals that could become a major non-Chinese source at a time when China still produces or processes about 80% of the world's rare earths. Arctic shipping routes. As polar ice retreats, Arctic sea lanes can cut the distance between Europe and Asia compared with routes through Suez or around Africa, turning Greenland into a gatekeeper. Military positioning. U.S. bases and radar in Greenland extend missile defense and surveillance deep into the Arctic and towards Russia. When Trump says we need Greenland for defense and refuses to rule out pressure, the signal to Denmark, Russia, and China is simple. This island is part of the new great power chessboard. Now add the rest of the Western Hemisphere. Cuba sits just 90 miles from Florida. U.S. officials worry about Russian ships and possible Chinese intelligence sites on the island. Canada shares the Arctic with Greenland and has its own critical mineral projects. Disputes over pipelines, trade, and Arctic governance keep resurfacing. Mexico anchors the southern border, where Washington links drug cartels, migration, and Chinese-linked fentanyl precursors to national security. Looked at separately, these are 3 local problems. Viewed together, they look like a reboot of the Monroe Doctrine, the 200-year-old idea that outside powers should stay out of the Americas and that the Western Hemisphere is effectively a U.S. sphere of influence. Only this time, instead of just Marines and coups, the tools are sanctions, military raids like Venezuela, control over oil and gas, and leverage over ports, minerals, and sea lanes. While the U.S. is focused on Latin America and the Arctic, North Korea decides to remind everyone it exists. On 3 to 4 January 2026, Pyongyang fires multiple short-range ballistic missiles into the East Sea, also known as the Sea of Japan, its first tests of the year. Japan reports that the missiles flew roughly 900 to 950 kilometers before splashing down outside its exclusive economic zone. The timing is deliberate. Launches come just as South Korea's president travels to China and as the world is still reacting to the U.S. operation in Venezuela. On paper, this is just another North Korean provocation. In reality, North Korea depends heavily on China for fuel and trade, and tightened weapons-related ties with Russia, including suspected artillery and missile transfers. Every missile test is also a signal from the China-Russia-North Korea axis, probing how many crises the U.S. can handle at once. Step back and look at the pattern. In Venezuela, the U.S. removes a hostile leader and positions itself to control or at least strongly influence the largest oil reserves on Earth. In the Arctic and Greenland, U.S. figures talk openly about needing the island for defense, minerals, and shipping lanes, while Denmark scrambles to draw red lines. Around Cuba, Canada, and Mexico, U.S. policy tightens the ring around the hemisphere to limit Russian and especially Chinese influence. In East Asia, North Korea's missiles test whether U.S. attention and resources can stretch from Caracas to the Arctic to the Korean Peninsula at the same time. This is not the old U.S. versus USSR Cold War. It is a new contest, U.S. on one side, China and Russia on the other, with states like Venezuela, Greenland, and North Korea turned into strategic pieces. And the battleground is not only military, it's who controls energy, rare earths, and sea chokes in global trade. Over the next months, 3 questions will show how far this goes. Who really controls Venezuela's oil? If U.S.-aligned companies and institutions move in under a new government, Washington gains a huge lever on global prices and Russia loses a key ally and revenue source. If Venezuela slides into chaos, or if Chinese firms quietly expand their footprint, the gamble may backfire. What deals are done around Greenland and the Arctic? Even if there's no formal sale, any expansion of U.S. bases, radar sites, or mining rights will confirm that the island is now a front line in great power competition. And does North Korea escalate or pause? A few launches are a test. A sustained campaign of missile and warhead tests, especially with open Russian or Chinese diplomatic cover, would mean a real multi-front crisis for the U.S. and its Asian allies. None of these moves is isolated. They are turns on the same chessboard, deciding who writes the rules of the global economy in the 2030s and beyond. Maduro in a New York jail. Greenland at the center of a tug-of-war between Washington and Copenhagen. North Korean missiles splashing into the Sea of Japan. If you connect the dots, you don't just see breaking news. You see the outline of a new world order being drawn right now.